Hello and welcome back to the channel. We are almost finishing our tour through the northern half of Portugal, and today we will visit Fatima, one of the most famous places of Christian pilgrimage in the world. Then move on our penultimate visit, to the medieval villa of Castelo de Vide. And if you like our video, do not forget to like it, subscribe and activate notifications so that you know when we upload a new video. Around 130 kilometers north of Lisbon is Fatima, where every year, 6 million people come to its famous and great sanctuary. As for parking, you will have no problem, as you have several spacious and free parking, even having a night zone for caravans, and that are located right next to the sanctuary. The history of this place begins on May 13, 1917, when three shepherds named Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta of 10, 9 and 7 years, respectively, the Virgin appeared to them in the small village of Cova de Iria. In total there would be 6 supposed appearances of the Virgin Mary, occurring in the last appearance, the so-called miracle of the sun. That day, 70,000 witnesses claimed to see the sun rotate and emit vibrant colors. This was the trigger for the Catholic Church to recognize the place, and over time the entire religious complex that can be visited today was developed, presided over by the Basilica of Our Lady of the Rosary of Fátima. In the interior of the neo-Baroque-style basilica, in which its tower of more than 60 meters high stands, ended by a 7-ton bronze cross, is the tomb of the three shepherds. 200 columns and 15 altars dedicated to the 15 mysteries of Fatima adorn the interior of the basilica. On the outside of the basilica, opposite the large square, we find the columnata, consisting of 200 columns, where you can see the images of several Portuguese saints and 14 intersecting altars. Without a doubt, it surprises the large size of the square, called the enclosure of prayer, built in an imposing size, due to the number of files that gathered on certain dates of the year, especially between May and September. On one side of the balcony we find the Chapel of the Apparitions, built in 1919, just in the same place where the shepherds witnessed the famous Marian apparitions, being destroyed by a bomb in 1922, and reconstructed shortly after. Today, it is covered by a large porch and a large number of seats, where pilgrims can start praying after their pilgrimage to Fatima, which ends right here. In the center of the enclosure, we can also see the statue of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, a statue of bronze, which is located in the place where the drilling was done in order to find water to meet the needs of the pilgrims. On the other side of the enclosure, and built in the most modern style, we find the Basilica of the Holy Trinity, which by size is the 4th largest Christian temple in the world, with a capacity of close to 9,000 people. In addition to its capacity, it surprises by its circular shape, with 125 meters in diameter and no intermediate supports, and a height of more than 20 meters. And in this impressive place, we end our visit to Fatima, although we can also move to the small village of Alentejo, where are the houses in which the three shepherds lived, and which today has become a large market, with shops of all kinds related to the apparitions. Castelo de Vide has about 3,000 inhabitants, and is located only 25 kilometers from the border with Spain. As for parking, you will have no problem, as you have several spacious and free parking, even with a parking for caravans, all located very close to the historic center. The name of Castelo de Vide comes from the existence of an ancient grape vineyard in the vicinity of what is today the village. Its name at first was Terra de Vide, later it became Vila de Vide, and with the construction of the fortress, it reached its definitive name of Castelo de Vide. In the center of the town, we find the great square of Peter V, where apart from the tourist office, we can find the town hall and the church of Santa Maria de Devesa, which has its origins in a small temple built in 1311, of which only a few remain shields and bricks, dating the current church of the 19th century, in a mixture of Baroque and neoclassical styles. On the square stands the statue of King Peter V, a monarch who carried out a radical modernization in the Portuguese state and its infrastructure, building roads, telegraphs and railways, as well as making improvements in public health. From the square, we enter the so-called Gothic neighborhood, with narrow and steep streets of stone, surrounded by houses with white facades and balconies with flowers. We continue to climb and gaining height, and with it better views of the castle of Vide, arriving in a short time to the castle, built by the order of the King Don Dinis and his brother Alfonso between 1280 and 1365, and in which stands first and foremost its great tower of the tribute. The entrance to the castle is free, and in it we find two museums, the Center for the Interpretation of Megalithism, which explains the history, location and peculiarity of the megaliths of the Alentejo, and the Museum of History and Military Architecture, with historical military pieces, and exhibition of the kings who passed through the castle between the 12th and 19th centuries. We access the castle by the door where the barbican existed to the central court, the courtyard of Alcacova, surrounded by different castle departments, and from which we will have access to the two museums. From the courtyard, we also have access to the Tower of Homage, which offers us a magnificent view of Castelo de Vide and its surroundings. The Tower of Homage was destroyed as a result of an explosion in 1705, when it was occupied by the Spaniards, again suffering damage in 1755 due to an earthquake, being rebuilt, after several interventions, in 1978. From the castle and within the recently walled, we access the medieval burgo, which is the original core of the villa. We recommend you to walk through the medieval town in peace, where you will enjoy a journey back to the past, walking through charming and narrow medieval streets, finding charming corners, such as the Rua do Forno, which has received several awards for being the most beautiful flowering street. Within the walk through the medieval Burgo, we find the small Church of Our Lady of Joy, a small temple from the 18th century, adorned with tiles. Within the medieval burg also, we find several mansion houses, such as the Casa dos Matos, where in 1282 the King Labrador received the ambassadors of Aragon who came to ratify the marriage contract between the King Don Dinis and the Aragonese Princess Dona Isabel. From the recent walled walls, we enter the Jewry, one of the oldest and most important in Europe, having its moment of greatest splendor between 1492, when the Catholic kings expelled the Jews from Castile, and 1497 when King Peter expelling them also from the Portuguese lands. In its streets that preserve the medieval fabric, in many of the houses you can still see symbols and inscriptions of the time, and in one of those streets we find the synagogue, now converted into a museum, to give a little more knowledge of the life of the Jews. In a small square we find the Font de Villa, a granite fountain with 6 marble columns, built in the 15th century, and catalogued as a public interest, and in which we end our visit to Castelo de Vide, before embarking on the next day our return to Spain.